Hello, everyone. Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I have a very special guest. I'll bring him on in a second. We're going to talk about something that, if you are an aspiring comics creator, I think you'll probably want to listen to. So let me introduce my guest. What's up, AJ? How you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing all right. A little while ago, you got to go to Heroes Con in, where is that? In
That's in Charlotte.
Charlotte. Okay.
Yep.
And not only did you do me a great favor, but you also got to do some pretty cool stuff, which is like portfolio review. So why don't you tell us a little bit first about yourself and your comic aspirations and stuff like that, and then we'll get into all the other stuff.
Okay, sure. Yeah. My name is Aiden. I am in South Carolina. I've grown up here my whole life. I got into comics when I was 10. As a kid, I didn't do much. I kind of just did whatever. And then when I was 10, I got a box of comics for my birthday, and I remember the comic that was on top to this day. It was, I believe it's Justice League issue 23 with the cover where they're like all leaning back
Yeah,
with the Pandora's box or whatever during the Trinity War arc. Um, and I just remember seeing that and being like, what, like, how do people do this? And my dad was like, well, people draw that. And I was like, okay, well, that's what I want to do now. I've drawn since then. I didn't necessarily take it seriously a
hmm
whole bunch. I just kind of liked recreating other people's stuff. But about
yeah,
a year ago, I was kind of like, if I'm going to take this seriously, I need to study and actually start practicing my own stuff. So that's when I started. About a year ago is when I'd say I'd like start taking it seriously, and that led up to me going to Heroes Con this year, doing portfolio reviews because I knew it would probably be a good idea to do that.
yeah, for sure. So I guess for people that don't know and people that are trying to get into comics and trying to do that, I think something that's very important is what you just kind of mentioned, right? Is first of all, you just got to start drawing.
Yep.
And if practice is a good way to practice is like you also mentioned, just kind of try to emulate in other people and find your style. But to actually get some feedback and get some, I guess, so you can kind of know what level you're at, some of the things that you need to
Hmm.
work on. Because sometimes as an artist, you can get lost, kind of like in like, oh, this looks really
Oh
good,
yeah.
or like you kind of know what you're working on. You know your style. You're very comfortable with that. But it's really about comics is a medium where like once you put it out there, it belongs to the people, and then they're
Yeah,
the
for
ones
sure.
that kind of interpret it. So,
Yep.
so it's good to get some feedback. Now, I'm sure it was pretty nerve wracking
Yes,
to
it
talk
was.
to industry
Yeah.
professionals. You kind of you want to talk about first kind of the overall portfolio review process, like what kind of stuff did you do, like kind of how your day went about that.
Yeah, sure. So, leading up to the convention, this is honestly probably one of the hardest parts was finding a script.
Hmm.
Honestly, that was really hard because at least for me, I don't like I have ideas, but I don't write
Right.
necessarily. So, trying to find a script that I also knew I would at least be able to enjoy drawing, was kind of hard.
Yeah.
I know for me, I'm a big fan of Daredevil, so I like scoured the internet for any Daredevil script I can find. I couldn't find one. Um, I ended up on Green Lantern. It was a Jeff Johns Green Lantern script I found. It's whatever restart he did after Rebirth. I haven't read it, but
Okay.
I read it and I liked it, so I did the first 6 pages of it. And I'll say I know at least I'm sure most artists are like this, but at least for me, even while I was drawing them, I like learned, where it was like I don't like this, so I know in future to do X. So I would say even just the experience of doing samples
Yeah.
was very beneficial. But I'll throw this out there too for any other aspiring artists that may see this. The website I ended up finding is called the Comic Script Archive. I think it has a whole bunch on there of random issues, and that was really helpful. There's all sorts of stuff. I know there's like
Okay.
Jeff Johns and Kyle Higgins, and there's all sorts of big name authors on there. So I'd recommend that. But so yeah, that was kind of the process going up. So I took about 2 weeks before, and I sat down and any time that I wasn't working, I just drew. Yeah, and then I went to the con, and on top of being super scared, excuse me, intimidated, the first person that I had on my list, and not only as a fan, but as like to get a portfolio review from, was Steve McNiven.
Oh,
So
oh, you guys
yeah,
started like pretty high
yeah.
up there,
Well,
huh?
for me at least, he has been one of my favorites of all time. One of the first things I ever bought, like comics I bought for myself, was like
Mhm.
Civil War,
Yeah.
Old Man Logan, all that stuff. So
Oh,
to
yeah.
me, he's like super big in my mind. He's one of my favorite artists of all time.
Yeah.
Um,
Now,
so
before we get into all that, how many pages of samples did you prepare? Like, what all how far into that script did you get and stuff like that?
so I got 6 pages in.
Okay.
Um, I mean, if I had more time, what I would have probably done, I was thinking about trying to ink them, but I didn't get to that just because it honestly the sample part of it was kind of a last minute thing
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
was part of me was like, well, I'll just take what I have, but then I looked at what I had and I'm like, well, it's not all original. It's a lot
Mhm.
of like I drew a Ryan Stegman cover and taught myself, how to do line work that way kind of thing. So I was like, they're gonna want to see storytelling, which I
Yeah.
will say, a little spoiler, they all really appreciated that. So for any other
Good.
aspiring artist, I recommend taking your pages, not your pinups. Not that you shouldn't, but prioritize the storytelling. But anyway,
Right.
so yeah, so I did 6 pages. I know Ethan, who was not able to join us, but he did I think 3 pages, but he wrote the script himself for that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and by the way, they were fantastic samples. They were really good. Shout out to Ethan Rayner if
Yeah, I'll
anyone wants
put
to
his
check him
stuff
out.
on the description of the video as well. Yeah, he wasn't able to join us, but kind of cool. So, all right, now let's jump back forward to you're gonna see Steve McNiven.
Yes.
What happens there?
So, real quick too. I also, leading up to the con, I reached out to some artists to see if they would be willing, just to see,
Right, right.
because just in case they were busy or something. And most of them, I mean, not everyone responded, but most of them were like, yeah, go ahead, bring your samples. So, and also the general attitude of the artist was, yes, we want to look at your stuff. So in future, don't be afraid. They're willing
Right.
to look. I know that there's going to be some star like fear,
Yeah, of course.
but they're all super chill and they're all really nice. So
Yeah.
first person, he was the first guy. I got the VIP ticket to make sure that I got in.
Right.
Got to see him. Was Steve McNiven. He When I got up, it was crazy because he was super nice, friendly. I said hi, and I was like, "Hey, I'm an aspiring artist. I'm a big fan of your stuff." And then he was like, "That's awesome." And before I could even like say anything, he was like, "Do you have any samples with you?" And I was like, yes, of course I do. So I handed him my stuff, and it was crazy because at least for Heroes Con, the VIP ticket gets you in 30 minutes early, but it's limited to 300 people. So there's really
Okay.
not that many people on the floor.
Right.
But he sat down and he took the whole like 30 minutes with me to just like go through.
Wow.
He was super nice. Because
Shout
also,
out Steve McNiven, man.
yeah, Steve
Way to go.
McNiven. Steve, all of the guys I met were really cool. Steve McNiven was super nice. I mean, he's a really nice guy. I'd
Yeah.
recommend if anyone. I mean, read his stuff. His art's
Don't be fooled by his art
yeah. Oh
because
yeah, no, it's
his art's
so
pretty
funny.
violent.
It's so
Uh,
funny because he draws like Old Man Logan and Nemesis, right? And you're like, man, this guy's got to be
yeah, yeah.
evil. But then you get there and he's the
Usually,
nicest guy.
usually the guys that draw the wackiest shit are usually like the nicer guys. So
Yeah, it was crazy, but he was super nice. So again, most of the things that this will as we go through the guys, this will be kind of the same things.
yeah.
So he really liked the storytelling.
Okay.
They don't also don't. It's a good thing to have your script. Like it's good to show that like I worked off of something. They like
Yeah.
that, but they're not going to read it. So don't
Right.
expect them to like look at it. Um,
Yeah, I think legally they probably can't,
oh,
anyways,
that's
right?
also true.
'Cause-
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, so they won't look at it, but they like to see. So he looked through like he flipped through quick first. He's like, yeah, I can tell what's happening, from page to page without having any sort of context. So good job on that. I had one panel. We'll see if we can get it in here, but where everyone liked it's this panel where like the glow light I did really well, and I will say I spent a long time on that one. So that one I was very happy with myself on that one. What else? So one of the big things he was talking about was life drawing. So I told him I was a student at a university. He was saying, take any life drawing class you can, spend time outside and just draw what you see.
Yeah.
Um, Another big thing for me was he thought a lot of my characters were stiff. So practice characters in motion, and just even when characters are standing
Hmm.
or like it's a close up on a face, try to get it somewhat dynamic
Yeah. Yeah.
in some way. Um, so to do that, one of the other things he recommended was I think it's a website called SketchUp, but it's kind of like these 3D. It's a website where people have made 3D models of different objects to help
Okay.
you, and you can kind of turn them around, and they're like renders of different things. So like buildings. The big reason he told me that was because in the script there was a bunch of like airplanes, and I tried to find the best references online I could, but some of it was a little wonky.
Yeah.
So he was saying, in future, if you ever have that kind of work, to look at that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, those were, I think those, what I remember, those were kind of the big highlights from seeing McNiven. He was super nice guy.
Nice.
He was great.
Did
So,
you chat about comics with him a little bit too?
I did. I was talking. So, actually, no, I didn't. But, um, kind of connected. I went and met later. I met Dexter Vines, who inks him a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so as I was at McNiven's line, I really wanted. There was this print. It's this like black and white one of the Wolverine with his claws up, and there's like the blood coming out, but it's all black and white, and there's crazy line work on it, right?
Okay.
Like insane. And so I went to go get it from Dexter so I could take it back to McNiven. And I was like, hey, just out of curiosity, how long did this take you to ink? And he was like, oh, like the arms alone were like 6 hours or something
Oh my
crazy. And I
god.
was like, dang, man, like that, I can't imagine. That's insane, like doing all the detail. But I know, I mean, mostly we just talked about the fact that, I just really like his work. And we pretty much jumped straight into the panels, so.
Nice, nice. All right, cool. Who did? Well, I guess did you also chat with Dexter about your portfolio?
I didn't, but I probably would have if I had inking
If you
samples.
had anything, yeah.
But I was kind of trying that. I think I didn't meet him till day 3. Like day 1
Okay.
and 2, we're trying to get as many reviews as I could.
Yeah, of course.
Um, so I was more focused on that. But if I take inking, which I'll actually get to, that was a big thing. A lot of the guys are recommending. But yes, I would like to do inking stuff in the future. So
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think for next time around, I don't know how many conventions you guys get over there, but for next time around, for sure, now you'll know what they're looking for as well,
mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
cool. Who did you go talk to next?
All right. So next is a guy that I know is very famous. To me, he's new. Um, and I know he's like skyrocketed recently. It's Danny
Yeah.
Warren Johnson.
Oh, of course. Okay.
Um, so I was going crazy day 1. So Danny Warren Johnson, I have recently started studying his stuff a lot. I just think his stuff is near perfection. Like it's insanely good. And
Yeah.
I've just never read his stuff. Like it's not something
Okay.
that I ever saw until Vanish. Everyone should read Vanish. Vanish is very
Yes.
good. But I saw his covers, and I remember seeing. I think it's the one where like Oliver's landing on the cars, and
Yep.
there's like the
Yep.
cops inside, and I was like, that is so cool. Like who drew that? And so I started looking at his covers, and then I saw his commissions that he does, which are just awesome. And then I'm planning on reading Murder Falcon and all that eventually. Like I really want to.
You're gonna have your mind blown.
I
I
know.
think I would recommend start with his older stuff like Extremity, and
Yeah,
then
that's on my list too. Yeah.
move forward, so you can kind of see his evolution too. Because it's been pretty like there is a reason he just kind of blew up out of nowhere, and it's because he's just gotten better and better at like every
Mhm.
project that he does. So I think, and like I said, I kind of draw a little bit on the side, but that's just as a hobby. But just like I do get to see it helps me with my reviews of stuff
Mhm.
too because I kind of know what I'm looking for and I know when something looks good and just seeing his growth too, like it's been pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And now he's gonna be giving us all Transformers.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be
I'm
pretty
not
cool.
even into Transformers, and I'm signed up. Like I don't know anything about Transformers, and I'm like, he's
Yeah,
drawing it, I'm getting it. So
excellent.
um, yeah.
So what did he say? Did he suplex you through his table? That's what I want to
No, he did
know.
not. But I will say he was probably the hardest. It wasn't even really mean. It was just more. He was more
Just
just
very
to the
direct.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I got up to his table. He was super nice. And then I was like, hey, I'm an aspiring artist. Would you be willing to look at my stuff? And he's like, yeah, for sure, for sure. So I gave him my stuff. And it was interesting because he opened up way different. Most of the other guys just like started talking. He was like, So also, what's interesting about him, he like always stands at his table. Like he doesn't sit. It's interesting. I don't know why, but it was just kind of cool. I don't know. But anyway, so I talked to him, and then he was like, "So what are you?" He flipped through really quick, and then he was like, "What are you trying to get out of this?" And I was like, I was kind of taken aback by the question.
Yeah.
Like I didn't. I was like, I wasn't expecting that. I was like, well, I want you to, like help me. Like if you have to hurt my feelings, go ahead because I don't like I got to get better. So he's like, okay. So his one of the big things that was, I think he was one of the only guys that said this, and I think also it's partially because if you ever look at his stuff, his motion is insane.
It's very
And it,
fluid.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
so he said to practice, and one of the drills he recommended was to like draw something like loose pencil really quick, and then get like a brush pen or just some kind of brush inking utensil
Hmm.
and ink it with like ink only with the brush. So try to get the thin lines, try to get the thick lines. Like only use the brush, which is very difficult. I've been doing it.
Yeah.
It's so hard because even though you can get the tip of it really
Yeah.
thin, it's hard to keep it that way when you're trying to like drag it across the paper.
Yeah.
So
I think you got pretty good at the letters though, like
thank you. Yeah.
the big
So
words and stuff that you've been using in your stuff,
yeah, thank
and
you.
we're part of the KLC Discord. That's kind of how we met. And sometimes somebody will throw out a character, and everybody will just post a sketch
Mhm.
if they do it. And yeah, like I think you've been incorporating some of those big noises into
Yeah.
your work, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that I he did a Friday night live thing, and I saw him do that, and I was like, I have that pen, I'll just try it. So then I did it, and I'm really happy with the result.
Yeah,
So
looks good.
thank you. But so yeah, so that was kind of his big thing. He also another big like thing that a couple guys said was the life drawing. So he was saying that to
Hmm.
practice from life. Um, yeah, I think the motion thing was really the big thing I got away from him. Yeah, I think that was kind of the big takeaway from him. And I picked up all his like little at the end of it, I picked up all his little like what are they? It's like Green Leader, Old Man Skywalker, like all the little ones that he makes himself. That
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
those
Okay,
those, and I read those. Those were really cool. They were really
nice.
cool. I like those.
So you said he was the most direct. Was there anything that he told you were like, oh man, that
No,
one
and that
hurt?
no. It wasn't anything like that. He was just a lot of the guy. I don't know how to explain this. I guess a lot of the guys were like super nice and like
Yeah,
he was very much like, if I'm going to help you get better, I'm not
yeah,
going to
no,
necessarily focus on what's good, which I appreciated. Like to me, that good. Like I don't want you to placate
right.
to me. Not that the other guys did. It was just he didn't. He just went straight in. So
He didn't have time for the compliment
right.
sandwich. He went
And
straight to the lunch meat. Yeah,
and
yeah.
his line was like all the way out the
Right.
building. So
I can imagine. I can
yeah,
imagine.
yeah. But no, he was nice. He was just very to the point.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Who did you see next?
All right, another guy. I've only ever read one of his things. Silver Surfer Black. I went to see Trad
Oh,
Moore.
yeah. Wow.
Trad.
What a collection of artists, because they're so
I
all
know.
three of them are so different. Like
Mm-hmm.
McNiven is very house style, comic style, and
Yep.
then I feel like Warren Johnson's kind of in between Tradmore and McNiven. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you had to put him on a range, and
Yeah.
then Tradmore's is like all the
All the
way
way.
to
He's
yeah.
crazy. And I'll say, even as a kid, I remember, or like when I started getting into comics, I was very much only on the house style side, where it's like
Mhm.
it's got to be the neat line work and like the
Yeah,
the Jim Lee stuff, and it
yeah,
was like it's
yeah.
got to be this. And then as I've gotten older, I'm like, no, I like the crazy stuff where it's
Mhm.
like Danny Warren Johnson, Tradmore, who draws insane, like just crazy stuff. But
And I've talked a little bit on the channel about like it was tough for me to get into Tradmore's art. Like the first time I
mhm.
picked up Silver Surfer Black, I didn't read it for a long, long time. Like I tried
Yeah.
reading issue one, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know about this." But then one day I picked it up, and I guess like your style just kind of evolves, or you're in a different mood,
Mhm.
and then it clicks and it connects. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, what did more talk to you about?
So let me say this: Trad is like the nicest guy ever. Like
I'm seeing a pattern, and that is that comic creators for the most
I
part
know
are nice.
they, and what's funny? I remember, as a kid, they always say like, "Don't meet your heroes."
Right.
I feel like it's the total opposite in comics. Like every time I've ever gone to a con, everyone is just super nice.
Nice. Yeah.
So, but no, Trad was the coolest dude. Before we even got into my samples, we just kind of like, I don't even remember what it was about, but we just kind of talked for like 10 minutes. It was great. And then I was like, I really love your stuff. Can I show you? So I showed him my samples. He said the same thing, good storytelling, um, practice life stuff. One
Yeah.
of the things that he recommended, and also Johnson recommended, was to, practice inking your own stuff. Just
Okay.
because it will, one, it allows you to not have to pencil so strictly, because you can pencil a little bit more loose and then fix everything up with your inks
Yeah.
as you go.
Yeah. I mean, nowadays we get a lot of books that you don't really have an inker anymore, right?
Yeah. And
So
that was the other thing too, was for marketability, as like a going into the industry. It's like, well, at this point, it's not necessarily the best way to break in only doing pencils.
right, I could do the work of two people, maybe three if I do my own
Exactly.
colors. So
Yeah. And even later, when we get to him, Ryan Lee, he was saying that same thing, where it's like, if you ink your own stuff, then you're getting paid an inker rate and a pencil rate.
nice.
So, but yeah, no, Trad was really great. He was really cool. Yeah, I think those were kind of the big things from him that he was talking about. So,
Okay, great. Let's see, who else did you get to meet?
next was Wes Craig. He was also a really cool dude. I only know him from Kaya, but I know that he's well known for doing Deadly Class, I think.
Yep, yep.
Um,
Well, he had been doing Deadly Class with Rick Remender for such a long time. They finally wrapped up, so he can actually do other stuff. But
okay.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I got all my Kaya stuff signed. By the way, I recommend that book. It's very good. I love that.
yep.
Love it. It's good. Um, he was really nice. I think he said all the kind of the same stuff. He was also one of the guys that recommended like inking my own stuff, or at least practice doing it. Um, but yeah, that was kind of him. He was a super nice guy. Yeah.
Did anyone give you like tips or advice on like how like what materials to use or like something like that?
Um,
Did you guys ever talk about any different media or like digital or anything
I
like that?
don't I don't think so.
Okay.
I think there might have been one, but I remember, at least me personally, I've only ever used paper and pencil, so like
Yeah.
I'm pretty adamant about that. I just started messing around with digital coloring,
Yeah.
but that's just my personal taste. Like
I
I
mean,
just,
it's good, right? Because then you'll have like original art to sell and stuff
mhm,
like that. It's so
yeah, and I don't know. I like the tactile
yeah,
feel,
yeah.
so
Well, I mean, the iPad's pretty like they've gotten pretty good at mimicking like what it
yeah.
feels like to do a pencil and using a pencil and paper. So
Okay. Well, I
yeah,
know I have an illustration course next semester, so I'll have to use, that kind of stuff. So I'm sure I will get addicted just like everyone else once I do it. So.
it's I'm telling you though. Sometimes those shortcuts are like, oh, it's so easy now. I could
Hmm.
just undo and move things around where I would have
Yeah.
to, So, all right, who else did you get a chance to talk to?
So let's see. So next, I met Juan Gedeon on day 2.
Okay.
Um, I'm just gonna like list them off and then kind of generalize
Yeah,
them.
you can highlight. You can
Yeah, yeah,
highlight like
yeah. So Juan Gedeon, also super nice guy. Who is next? Paul Pelletier, super nice guy. Um, Ryan Lee, he was super fun to talk to. He was super nice. I ended up picking up Mountainhead from him, which was a good book. I really liked that one. Um, and who was the? I know I got one more guy. Oh, after the show, or excuse me, on day 3, I met Lionel Yu.
oh, okay.
Yeah, and I was telling him, I'm an aspiring artist. He was also one of the first artists I ever like got into.
Yeah.
I grew up with Indestructible Hulk. So to me, it was super cool to meet him. And I told him I was aspiring artist, and he's like, "Cool, like, give me your email so that I can send you, or excuse me, so that I can send him my samples after the show." He just had a really long line,
Yeah, yeah.
but I did, and he actually just got back to me a couple days ago, and gave me a review. So that was really cool.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, he was super nice. His thing, he liked my stuff. He just was saying to practice anatomy was his big thing,
Okay.
which makes sense. I mean, his anatomy stuff's really good. So
Yeah, he's very much like everything's the the correct proportions and stuff
Hmm.
like that, as
Yeah,
opposed to like that Treadmore or even Warren Johnson, where
yeah,
it's a little bit more loose with some of those. There's a lot of liberties with their art.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So I'm trying to think. What did the other guys say? Coley Hamner was really cool. He talked to me for like 15 minutes. Super nice guy.
Kelly's a
Um,
legend.
yeah, he was super nice guy. Ryan Lee, one of the big things that I took away from him, he was talking about how, so for me, I'm not great at like one of the things that I know, like that I struggle with, and Ryan Lee pointed out was like folds in clothing and that sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
Um, so I love a lot of line work, so I have a tendency to like sort of hatch everything,
Yeah.
even though it really should probably just be like a straight line or something. So one of his big things was to practice, like folds, and that sort of thing. But he was also talking about if you do hatching, to have the hatching come out of like a pre-existing dark area, or at least off of like a pre-existing form. So don't
Mhm.
just have, you know, hatching or like random lines floating in space. Try to have it come out of somewhere that's already visually interesting, I think
Yeah.
is the way he put
Okay.
it.
I get that.
Um,
I get that.
so that way there's, I mean, not that you I mean, obviously there's places where you can, it's just like, don't do it as much as I did, basically.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was kind of the big thing from Ryan Lee.
That's interesting. He's more like it's more about some restraint as opposed to
Mhm.
like kind of getting loose with it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, Juan Guedion was also saying, I remember one of the big things for him was like getting comfortable with like almost using yourself as a model, kind of like when you have different poses. I know Jorge Jimenez,
Yeah, Jorge Jimenez does
he
that a
does that
lot.
all the time. I mean,
Now,
he's ripped.
granted, he does
He's
kind of
ripped.
have the build of a superhero,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But yeah, no. So it was just one of those things that like I didn't necessarily think about. But I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense to do that. And that was another thing a lot of the guys were saying was like, if you use a reference, don't hold too strictly to it. Like
Yeah.
use it as a sort of a skeleton, so that way it helps you get the basis of the drawing without being held to it. So like
Right.
if I took a picture of myself, obviously I'm skinny. So, if I'm drawing like Superman, just use the bone structure so that way you can add like the muscle on and that sort of
Right.
idea. Um, but yeah, that was, I mean, the big things were like ink your own samples in the future. Storytelling is key. A lot of the guys really liked that. Just study anatomy,
Cool.
get
Yeah. So
bigger
I
visual
I,
interest.
I put together a list of like just from our conversation,
Mm,
the big four things, and you just kind of went through them. Get good at storytelling, and I think
yeah,
that's really important. So I'll uh I'll have you send me the link to that website for the scripts so I could put it
yeah,
on the description, and that way people can get them there. It's interesting that I've only ever had, I've only ever seen like held like a script in my hand once. Gail Simone brings them to conventions and she signs them.
oh really, that's
Yeah, so
cool.
I got like one of her Birds of Prey scripts.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, like those are kind of like limited items because then she kind of copies and numbers them and stuff.
Mhm.
So that it's really cool to see. Um, is there, when you were going through the script, was there anything that you didn't really know, like what the annotation was or like some of the notes?
Oh, that's a great question. So actually, one of the big things I didn't know, it's just a term that like I had never heard, was stat panel, and I was like, I don't know what this is. I even put it in the Discord
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
was
we
like,
talked about it on the
I
Discord.
don't like what does this mean? And I think everyone kind of chimed in, but it came to the effect of it just means like repeat the same
Yeah.
panel, and
Hmm.
that was actually something that Steve McNiven talked to me about. And thank you for asking that. Otherwise, I probably would have forgotten. But so one of the pages, I don't know if you as an artist, but sometimes when I draw something, when I'm done, I'm like, I absolutely despise what I've done.
Yeah.
But there was a page where it called for stat panels, and I like to draw everything, so I redrew each panel,
Okay.
like that called for the stat, and it just didn't look the same. Like I knew it, and I couldn't figure it out. So for all future artists, if you're ever told there's a stat panel, you can just write stat panel in the panel box and you're good. And they'll just like copy and paste it. So you don't have to like worry about drawing it over and over again.
Yeah,
Because
I think I've even seen people where they actually do make a copy of it and they just kind of make a so the page, I guess that's mainly if for the like for the letter and stuff, so they know where everything
yeah,
needs to go later on. Um, okay, cool.
yeah,
So we have get good at storytelling. So definitely become familiar with the script, what it looks like, all the terms, and like don't be afraid to ask questions. I think there's a lot of us comic book nerds, and I think we got a pretty good community over at KLC,
yeah,
where a lot of people we're either really into comics or like are aspiring creators and stuff like that.
hmm
So it's good to have a community there. I also have draw from real life. I
yes,
think that's the second key advice that I kind of heard from everyone. Ink your own stuff. I think that was the other thing,
hmm
and then practice anatomy. I think those were the
yep,
big four main takeaways that I kind of heard from our conversation. So
yep. And I guess the other big thing is practice all the time. So
yeah,
draw whenever you can, and
always be
draw
growing.
everything. Don't just draw people, because I know that was my big thing too, leading up until like about a year ago, was I would only draw like the figures, because I was like, I just want to draw like Spider-Man, and
Yeah,
Venom and like all that kind of stuff. But then it's like, well, you have to be able to draw buildings and trees and guns and cars,
yeah, right.
So
This is it. You don't have assistants like manga where they can draw the
yeah,
backgrounds for you.
yeah.
So
So
cool. All right. Was there anything else from your experience that you kind of want to share with people that may be watching this, trying
um,
to get into comics or?
yes, I also did a review with I'm probably not. I don't probably don't have it right. His name was Andy Schmidt, but he works with. I think he's the editor at like CEX Publishing. I think is what it's called.
Okay.
They're publishing. I think it's called 7 Years in Darkness. But he was doing portfolio reviews Friday and Saturday, and I got into the Saturday group.
Cool.
And one of the big things from him was being knowing to take a script and how do I put this? Like knowing when to add to it if you need to,
Okay.
but like being doing it in a way where you like communicate with the author, like not just
Yeah. Yeah.
adding stuff, but like because there was a sequence I had where I think it's like it's Hal Jordan, and he gets like ripped out of this flight simulator thing he's in. Um, he was it was a little confusing, basically, like what happened from panel to panel, and he recommended adding like a panel in between to kind of show um,
Okay. So
the
you don't have to
full
just draw
sequence.
what's on the script.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, comics. It's one of the most collaborative like art forms that
Mhm.
I know. So that makes sense. So how did you get in? Like, was that something they were offering at the convention for like
Yeah,
a photo review?
well, I shouldn't have said get in. It was just I had time to go. It
Gotcha.
was like
Gotcha.
1 hour. He set aside 1 hour each day, and a bunch of people went. So I think in my group, of the people that ended up showing up, there was like maybe 20 people there,
Okay.
and I was like number 10 in line.
Nice.
But he was a super nice guy. He was also very to the point, like Johnson,
Yeah.
which makes sense because I mean he's an editor for a
Yeah. Yeah.
company, so but he's also done other stuff. Like I know he worked for like IDW, and I think he even said he worked for Marvel at one point. So
Oh, cool.
yeah. So he was super cool, super helpful. All his other notes were the same as
How's the other
the
guy?
other guys. Yeah, so
Okay. Well, good. I mean, it looks like you got some real solid advice.
mhm.
You got to talk to some very interesting people.
Yeah.
Is there any last piece of advice or anything, even just for prepping for the convention, that you would
Oh
recommend? Like, how did you bring your stuff? Like, did you have like one of those whatever those
yeah,
notebooks with the pages, or like?
yeah. That is what I did. I had a bunch of binders with stuff in with the comics in it. That's kind of what I did.
Okay.
I have done like the tote thing in the past.
Yeah.
But the backpack is heavy, but I will say it's I don't know. I liked it better because you're not. I tend to lose things,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll like put the stroller down and then like walk away, and it'll be like, oh, I have to go figure out where I left it because I can't. So to me the backpack was nicer because you have it, you put it out in front of you, pull out
Yeah.
whatever you need, and pick it back up. So
Cool. All right. Well, this was great. Do you have any last things you want to tell the people?
um, read comics. It's fun.
Yeah, for
They're
sure.
great. What am I reading right now? I am reading Kaya. Kaya's awesome. Um, I haven't picked it up yet, but I'm excited to read Swan Songs. Um,
Oh man, that first issue,
yeah.
holy shit.
Well, I haven't read any Ice Cream Man, but I have read Art Brute, and Art Brute was so good. I loved Art Brute.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm very excited to read Swan Songs. What else am I reading? Daredevil. Daredevil's great. I'm very excited for it's Saladin Ahmed and Aaron Cooter taking over in
Hmm.
September. I'm excited to see where they go. I'm excited to see how Zdarsky ends. I'm very very
Yeah.
excited for that.
They he's got a tall order because you're supposed to. It's a tradition that you leave Daredevil like in the worst
Yeah,
place you can. So the
and he's
next
in. I mean,
next time they pick it up,
spoilers, but he's in hell right now. So,
yeah, it won't
um,
get much worse than that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Something epic super fun because it has been scratching my crossover itch.
Oh, okay.
So,
I heard that was a pretty also emotional book. I haven't read it, but
mhm.
I've heard that it's pretty emotional. Like there's
Crossover is I mean, I don't know how emotional people get at comics, but for me it's not something that happens often.
yeah.
So when I read the first issue of Crossover and actually like felt something at the end, I was like, "Oh my god, this book is crazy." And it's my favorite comic period. Like I love Crossover. I know whatever's going on with Donnie, I hope he's doing well.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
I would love a crossover comes back. I would love a crossover comes back. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I think did the Kirkman issue come out? I think that was the last one that
yes.
came out, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's well,
Or maybe
so
we have one and then Donnie and then
yeah,
that's it.
spoilers for crossover, but yeah, I think that is like issue 12 because that's when you find out Negan is the guy that's been going
Oh yeah,
around
yeah.
murdering
It was
everyone.
a fucking
So,
fucking crazy ass book.
yeah.
Um,
So, but yeah,
cool.
something epic's good. I'm trying to. Those are kind of the big ones I think I'm reading right now. So those are I'd recommend reading those. Oh yeah, check out Art Jedi's thing. He's doing
Oh yeah,
Amarok. Check out Art Jedi.
yeah.
Uh,
I think what I want to plan is maybe get some of there's a lot of artists on the Discord, so
mhm.
maybe do like a roundtable with you guys. Maybe we can plan that for the future, and then maybe hear some of their experiences and just give more advice. I think people are always looking for more advice on how to get into comics, how to get this like it's a really hard career, right? I
Yeah,
think anything in the arts is really difficult. So
yeah,
cool.
yeah. But Art Jedi, and I think his name's Oscar. He's in the
Oh yeah,
Discord.
Oscar's got this
Mhm.
Kickstarter, I think,
Yeah. So
or a crowdfunding of some kind.
yeah, so check that out.
Yep.
Dom Gomez, I know he's putting out it's like what is the name of that website? It's like Comics Connect. It's like where you can put comics online for free.
Oh yeah.
But he's doing a free one on there, so check it out. I think it's called In the Valley or something.
Mhm.
That one's good. I feel like there's one more. Ethan Rayner, he put up, I think it's called Ghostman Alpha. He also did that same website, so check that out. Um, if you want to
Cool.
check me out, AJ Penciler on Instagram. So
Yeah, there's some really fun reels about like your process and all that. That
mhm,
I really like those. So
yeah,
I'll put all that stuff in the description. Also, like this isn't advertisement of any kind, but like if you want to join the KLC Discord,
oh yeah, yeah,
that's where a lot of these guys hang out.
yep,
Kind of how we met. So like, it's
yeah,
pretty cool in there. I mean, there's like Bob Quinn's on there. Like
oh yeah,
there's other artists that are on there. Ryan Stegman chimes in
mhm,
every once in a while too.
yep.
Like
Tyrell Cannon's on there.
yeah, Tyler
I'll
Cannon.
say also for me, the number one artist, comic artist, is Ryan Stegman. Just saying, I love Stegman. It was
Yeah.
funny too because I grew up reading like during the 0 year arc of
Oh
Batman,
yeah.
and I went back. I've read it all. I own it all finally. Um, so Greg Capullo is a huge inspiration. I got to
Right.
meet him a couple years ago. Super nice guy. But so I used to tell people it was like Greg Capullo, obviously, like he's my number one. And then I went back and looked through all my stuff, and I'm like, wait a minute, I have Uncanny Avengers. I read Superior Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Human. I have Venom, like all the way up to King in Black, and now Vanished. And it's like, oh, well, no, it's Stegman. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, well, man, I'm glad you were able to find some of those early Batman issues because
Hmm.
some of that early New 52 stuff, like they
Oh
just,
yeah,
it's not like super expensive where you'll never be able to buy it, but it's
yeah,
still like I remember trying to go back and there was one or two things that I was missing, and I was like, oh
yeah,
man,
yeah. That I think it's issue 6 last year was crazy. I think I went to Heroes Con last year too, and I wanted to get issue 6, which I think is technically like the first appearance of the Court of Owls.
Yep.
Um, and I guess it was during that same year that Batman was coming out, Robert Pattinson's Batman, and there was
Oh
all
yeah.
this speculation about the Court of Owls being the villains in the second one. So the prices were like, I think I ended up paying like $70 or something,
Oh
but
wow.
it was like it's not like terrible, but
No,
it was
yeah,
still
but
like,
it's a
yeah,
lot to pay for a comic that came out like over 10 years ago,
mm-hmm.
which is feels like it's not that long ago. So it maybe shouldn't be. I don't know. It's still
Yeah,
a pretty seminal work from both of them. So
yeah,
I get it. I do have my Batman #1 signed by
I do too. Yeah,
all three of them, Glapion and
mm-hmm.
Capullo and Snyder. So like
Yep,
that's one of my pride and joys in the collection. So
yeah, same.
cool. Well, AJ, tell the people again, where can they find you online?
I have an Instagram, AJ Penciler. I also, if you want to check out my coloring stuff, I don't post on there a bunch, but I have a couple things. That's AJ Colorist. Also on Instagram. I just started a Deviant Art. Also, I think it's the real AJ Penciler. Um,
Well, we need to start an AJ
yeah,
Inks.
yeah. I'll have to do an AJ Inks. But yeah, so that's where you can find me. I'm trying to think. Yeah, check out all the people I mentioned. There are plenty of other aspiring artists that I'm sure are just not coming to mind at the moment, and I'm sorry. But
Yeah,
um,
I'll put this on the KLC server too, and then I'll ask them to send me their stuff so we can put
yeah,
links in the description for all that. I think nowadays there's not really like art studios like where
no,
people
yeah,
kind of get together, but Discord and stuff like that is kind of like a
yeah,
digital studio, so that's kind
no,
of cool. Well, great, AJ. Once again, thanks for being here. Thanks for answering all these questions.
yeah, no problem.
Uh, and for everyone else, make sure to share, like, subscribe, leave us a comment if you're an aspiring comics creator. Leave us a comment. Was this good? Did you get anything out of this video? So put that in the comments and stay tuned. We have comic reviews, trailer reactions, TV recaps, and we'll have more comic creators, aspiring comic creators in the future. Maybe this will be like, oh yeah, I got AJ's interview like before he blew up, so
Yeah.
I'm on the groundwork. So cool. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. Bye bye.